Yes, I know this segment is silly, but I want to talk about it anyway. And I want to get serious in the end. I think they're doing, if you watch my main channel segment, the media and the establishment, they're doing a lot to protect Joe Biden. So let's call out one of his more sillier gaffes. And then in that context, talk about how they outright canceled their presidential primary. Because look, we get it. They say he's the presumptive nominee. He's the one moving forward, so they're not going to have it. I guess you could argue it's fair. Why should they bother having it? But there were objections from the Sanders campaign. So yes, it would seem like they're protecting Joe Biden as he says patently absurd things like that we need more economic intercourse. Yes, that's the story. In an interview, he said when you have travel bans and shutdowns, you lose economic intercourse. Now, I think it's fair to point out that good old Grampy Joe is using a literal definition of the word intercourse that most of us don't use anymore because it's almost archaic, right? Look, you can use the word intercourse. I'm probably going to get demonetized by YouTube for saying the word intercourse. That's how you know this word doesn't mean what Joe Biden thinks it means. But Joe Biden also uses words like malarkey. I don't know what malarkey means. I'm 34. I am an adult working in this country. I'm not a child, and I don't know what that word means. I really doubt any younger person knows what that means, but I guess if he's trying to court older voters, fine. But in this interview, he says economic intercourse. So let's read into this, and I'm going to show you the definition of the word intercourse to prove Joe Biden should not have said this thing. I hope this is fun and funny. We're trying not to be super serious right now. Former Vice President Joe Biden ripped Donald Trump's policies Monday night, saying the U.S. needs to engage in more economic intercourse across the world. The presumptive Democratic presidential nominee told CBS 4 in Miami on Tuesday night that the Trump administration has reduced America's standing in the world. Quote, I would get much more engaged in the world. We can't step back. The former vice president lamented the possibility of long-term travel bans being imposed as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. If in fact, for example, we solve the problem in the United States and you don't solve it in other parts of the world, you know what's going to happen. You're going to have travel bans. You're going to not be able to have economic intercourse around the world. Oh, yeah. Notably, Biden was not talking about assault allegations levied at him by staffer Tara Reade during the course of the interview. But let me just point out that in all of the interviews he's done, apparently nobody's ever asked him about the allegations against him. How's that for the media protecting Joe Biden? Any one of these journalists could ask Joe Biden, hey, a new story came out. Well, look, maybe by now they've brought up the allegations. I don't know, but come on, they love to protect the guy. Of course, conservative media pounced at the opportunity to slam Joe Biden over the phrase economic intercourse. While I certainly don't think it's the most important story because it's just another gaffe for Joe Biden, ultimately I decided to actually pull up the definition. And it is true. A definition of the word intercourse is communication between different groups or people. At least that's what Google would tell you. But any regular young-ish person, like, I don't know, I'm 34, I don't consider myself young necessarily, I guess. I'm an adult, okay? But check us out. Here's the Merriam-Webster definition of the word intercourse. Oh man, I got in trouble for this already. Whatever, I'm going for it, fine. I'm getting demonetized. I'm going to have to be demonetized on this one. Definition of intercourse is physical contact between individuals that involves the genitalia of at least one person. I'm going to now move away from this because I'm already in enough trouble. But look, you know what? I should be allowed to, in an educational context, explain to you what Joe Biden accidentally said. I don't know what he means by economic intercourse, but I think he accidentally said something that kind of makes sense. Like if you think about it out of the context of human procreation, intercourse between two groups sharing money and then, doing things to make new things. Like, here's the thing. If you Google search intercourse, it tells you the definition of the word is communication between an individual or groups. Okay, well, economic intercourse, like monetary communication. No, I think what he was saying was like, U.S. is over here, Russia's over here. Russia looks over at the U.S. like, yo, bro, that oil looks pretty good. And the U.S. is like, yo, that wheat looks pretty good. Let's put this stuff together and let's get some economic intercourse. Bam. Listen, man, I know it's silly. Hopefully you had a laugh. I don't think it's the funniest thing in the world. But I think we've got the story, and it's kind of an addendum to the main segment I did. New York outright cancels presidential primary despite objections from Sanders' campaign. I'm just kind of over pretending like this guy's got a brain. And I know you've probably heard it from me a million times, but seeing this story about another gaffe after gaffe after gaffe, you know when he gaffed in that interview saying economic intercourse, he actually stuttered and stammered too. It wasn't just his clean quote. And I think Daily Caller, you gotta put in that when you're writing it down, you can't just gloss over him going blah, 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 and muttering. You gotta include that. But I view this story that they're canceling the primary as another effort to just protect Joe Biden. Perhaps it's because New York is a very progressive place that would give Bernie Sanders a lot of delegates. Bernie Sanders wants these delegates because he needs that leverage to force Biden to adopt more progressive policies. By canceling this, they're stripping the progressives of their power. Please, I get it. You don't like Sanders. You want to stop him in his tracks. I disagree with his policy, but the voters certainly have a right to be heard. I think I'm right, man. I think these UBI Yang Bernie people, I'm just messing with you guys. But I disagree. I disagree with these policies, all right? And I'll talk about it in an upcoming segment. But I absolutely 100% agree that you should be able to vote for what you want, and that should influence your party's decision making. This is just another manipulation by the establishment to protect a guy who says stupid things like economic intercourse. The Daily Caller reports, the New York State Board of Elections canceled the state's June 23rd Democratic presidential primary scheduled on Monday, despite receiving a request from Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign urging the primary to take place as planned. Officials on the board acknowledged that the move to cancel the presidential primary outright will anger some of Sanders' supporters, but said they couldn't justify holding the election amid the coronavirus crisis. Quote, what the Sanders campaign wanted is essentially a beauty contest that, given the situation with the public health emergency, seems to be unnecessary and indeed frivolous, said the state's election board's Democratic co-chairman, Douglas Kellner, who said he received thousands of emails from Sanders supporters urging the primary to move forward. A Sanders campaign lawyer, Malcolm Seymour, sent a letter to the state's election board on Sunday asking them not to cancel the primary. Senator Sanders has collaborated with state primaries, the National Party, and the Biden campaign to strengthen the Democrats by aligning the party's progressive and moderate wings, Seymour wrote, according to the Wall Street Journal. His removal from the ballot would hamper those efforts to the detriment of the party in the general election. We can see exactly what Bernie wants to do, and I commend him for it. There are a lot of progressives in New York, a lot of them. They want to have their voices heard. They deserve to have their voices heard. All we learn from this is that Joe Biden is out of his gourd, and that the Democrats will do everything in their power to shut down anyone who dare oppose them. It's why I am not a fan of them after what they did to Yang and Tulsi, and yes, even Bernie. Disagreed with Bernie. Wasn't going to vote for the guy. But come on, man. You see how they play the game. You see what they do. You can throw everything you want at Donald Trump for being all of these bad things, but the Republicans didn't cheat. They're in the primary. You can argue voter roll purges and all that stuff. I get it. I'm listening. I'm talking about in the Democratic process. The Republicans hated Trump in the primary process. I'm sorry, the Democratic process of which the primary. Okay, you get the point. In the primary, Trump was able to win, and he said things people didn't like, and a bunch of Republicans became never Trumpers. And when it comes to the Democrats, the establishment will not back down. Maybe they saw what was happening with the Republicans and they played a better hand. Maybe Bernie Sanders wasn't strong enough to win. I think that's the reality. Donald Trump is a bully. He's a tall, aggressive individual. He's going to push you around. Bernie Sanders bends the knee every time. They smear, they slander, and they do this. And where is Bernie to say enough? To call his supporters and say, we won't stand for this. Voters in about 20 New York counties that were slated to vote for only the Democratic nominee for president will no longer have a reason to vote in the June 23rd primary, but some 42 counties that have down-ballot races for congressional and state-level positions will keep their polling places open. Notably, AOC, I believe, is having her primary at a similar point, so we'll see how this plays out. Sanders dropped out of the presidential race and endorsed Biden. Well, you know what, man? Maybe that's why they're saying, too bad. You played ball. You endorsed Biden. You're out of the race. If you stayed in the race, then they wouldn't have canceled this. So now you lose more power by doing so. You should have stayed in the race, man, if that's what you really wanted. In the absence of an active Bernie campaign, we are pushing folks to vote for the delegates. Paco Fabian, the director of campaigns for Our Revolution, a dark money group founded by Sanders in 2016, told CNBC on Wednesday. Our Revolution chairman Larry Cohen suggested Monday he would challenge the New York delegation at the Democratic National Convention, according to the New York Times. Suppressing the Sanders vote in New York will again lead to attacks on the party across the nation and harm the volunteer effort that our group and others are building for Joe Biden. I gotta say, the Democrats are getting a lot of great benefits out of this crisis. They're shutting out the DNC, possibly even going to do it remote, which really hurts the progressives and Bernie Sanders. And so long as Joe Biden is hidden, the onus is on Donald Trump. People are watching him, not Biden, so Biden can stay hidden. And if people don't like Trump, they'll just check the box for other guy. They're getting a lot of benefits out of this. So we'll see how Sanders plays this one. I think he's going to lose. I think one of the problems with Bernie Sanders was that he had a bunch of good policy ideas. He did. Not all of them. I'm saying he had some good ones. Talking about national security, that was Bernie Sanders. Ending these free trade agreements like TPP, opposing them, he had some good positions. But he backed away from them to court a progressive youth activist base. It didn't work for him. Grow a spine, Bernie, and you may have actually won because people did believe in you. But this is what you get when you bend the knee. I'll leave it there. I got a couple more segments coming up for you in a few minutes. Stick around. I will see you all shortly.